They said no one could survive this way, that the Alaskan wilderness would break him, freeze him, and bury him. But instead of being consumed, Heimo Korth became a legend in the unforgiving heart of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where temperatures dropped to 60 below and help is only a dream. He built a life most people can't even imagine. No grocery stores, no neighbors, no second chances, just raw survival, day after day, year after year. This isn't the story of a man running from the modern world, it's the story of one who chose the impossible and made it his home. Stay with us, because you've never heard a survival story like this. You might think someone as legendary as Heimo Korth was born in Alaska, but he wasn't. He came from Wisconsin, a world of farms, neighbors, and electricity about as far as you can get from the frozen tundra. Yet, at just 22 years old, with nothing but 2 duffel bags and a heart full of adventure, he boarded a Greyhound bus bound for Fairbanks in 1974. Back then, Alaska was still America's last frontier, the kind of place where men could vanish into the wilderness and live by their own rules, if they were skilled enough to survive. The truth was, Heimo had no idea what he was really walking into. He knew hard work from growing up on a farm, but farm chores in Wisconsin are nothing compared to surviving a night when the Arctic wind cuts through you like a blade. And yet, that was exactly what drew him north. He wasn't chasing temporary work like so many others. He wanted to stay. He wanted to live as Americans once did, when the continent was untamed, when mistakes were fatal, and when only the strong endured. For Heimo, the wilderness wasn't just a place to visit. It was the only place he truly felt alive. At first, he worked construction in Fairbanks, but his real education began when he sought out the old-timers, hunters, trappers, and bush pilots who had lived through Alaska's territorial days. They became his teachers. Among them was Phil Yaga, a seasoned trapper who saw in Heimo the reflection of his own younger self. Phil taught him everything: how to set trap lines that stretched for hundreds of miles, how to read the weather and land, and how to avoid the mistakes that had cost many newcomers their lives. Through Phil Yaga, Heimo learned that wilderness living wasn't just about skill, it was about discipline, patience, and the mental toughness to endure months of solitude. He mastered the art of recognizing subtle animal tracks, predicting weather patterns, and preparing food for long stretches when hunting was impossible. He began to understand that in the Arctic, one wrong decision could cost everything. By the late 1970s, Heimo Korth was ready to put his knowledge to the ultimate test. Alone, with nothing but hand tools, he built a cabin designed to withstand the brutal Arctic conditions. Its foundation resisted frost heaving, its walls trapped heat, and its roof bore the weight of crushing snow. And then came the hardest part: his first winter alone. Cut off from all contact, he faced months of darkness, bone-deep cold, and silence so heavy it felt alive. That first winter nearly killed him, but he survived. He hunted caribou, fished the short summer rivers, and preserved meat with methods borrowed from both native traditions and his own practical innovations. He endured isolation that would have broken most men. By 1985, the quiet farm boy from Wisconsin had fully transformed into a hardened master of the northern wilderness. What had started as a bold adventure soon became a way of life. No longer just a visitor passing through, he had become a true part of the wild, moving with its rhythms and surviving by its rules. It was during this time that Heimo made a choice that left many stunned. He would never return to his old world. Alongside his wife, Edna Korth, he took the ultimate step. A helicopter carried them deep into the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, a place often called America's last frontier. This vast and unforgiving wilderness had no roads, no power lines, no neighbors, and no conveniences of modern life. The nearest help wasn't just miles away, it was days, sometimes weeks, from reaching them. For most, such isolation would be unthinkable. But for Heimo, it was the final act of freedom. This was no longer about an adventure to test his limits. This was a permanent commitment to the wild, a vow to live, and perhaps die, on nature's terms. His life followed the rhythms of the land, the same rhythms that had governed Arctic survival for thousands of years. Summer was for gathering, fishing, and hunting. Fall meant final preparations. Winter was the time to endure, surviving only because of the work done in the warmer months. Through it all, Heimo pushed deeper, establishing trap lines that stretched for miles upon miles, accessible only by dog-sled, snowmobile, or his own determination. Sustainable lifestyle in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But the wilderness does not forgive, no matter how skilled you are. In one of the darkest moments of his life, Heimo's daughter Colleen, just 18 years old, was killed in a car accident in Fairbanks. For the man who had built his life around the wilderness, grief came crashing down like an avalanche. Isolation, once his greatest strength, became his prison. Instead of abandoning the life he had built, Heimo turned once again to the land. He built a memorial for Colleen in the wilderness, a living tribute that would forever tie her spirit to the Arctic she loved. The tragedy changed him. He realized that complete isolation was no longer sustainable, not for his family. He installed satellite phones, kept closer contact, and improved transportation so he could be with his loved ones when they needed him. It was his way of balancing two worlds, the family he cherished, and the wilderness he could never abandon. Over the years, filmmakers and writers began to take notice of Heimo Korth's extraordinary life. They captured his story on film and in print, not as a romantic tale of wilderness adventure, but as a raw and unfiltered reality. Unlike the polished, glamorous portrayals of wilderness living that appear in popular shows, his story revealed the true cost. It showed the biting cold that could freeze skin in minutes, the relentless danger of being cut off from help, the grief of unbearable loss, and the endless work required just to survive a single day. But alongside those struggles, his story also revealed the profound rewards: freedom, independence, and a connection to nature so deep that it could never be replaced by modern society. Heimo eventually became more than just a survivor. He became a mentor. He passed on the knowledge he had earned through decades of hardship, teaching others the skills and mindset needed to endure in such an unforgiving land. He never sugarcoated it. For him, wilderness life was not a hobby or an escape from civilization. It was a demanding way of life that required absolute commitment, patience, and sacrifice. At the same time, Heimo used his voice to become a defender of the wilderness itself. He knew better than anyone how fragile the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge truly was. He warned that development, climate change, and human pressure could erase it forever. His message was simple and powerful. Once the wilderness is gone, it cannot be replaced. From the beginning, people had tried to stop him. Locals warned him the Alaskan bush wasn't forgiving, that dreamers like him never lasted. Even the government discouraged permanent settlement in the refuge, insisting survival was impossible and his dream had no future. But Heimo Korth never listened. He endured frostbite, near starvation, and isolation that would have broken most men. And when tragedy struck again, this time with the devastating loss of his daughter in a canoe accident, he did not turn back. He kept going. His life became both a cautionary tale and a beacon of inspiration, proof that resilience could outlast even the harshest wilderness. Today, Heimo Korth stands as one of the last living links to the old frontier spirit, the kind of man who proves what it really means to be self-reliant, to live with the land rather than against it. His story is not romanticized. It is raw, painful, and inspiring. It shows us that the wilderness gives, but it also takes. It demands respect, but it offers rewards no city could ever match. In the end, his life is about more than survival. It is about resilience, balance, and the unbreakable bond between man and nature. Through it all, Heimo Korth has shown that while the wilderness is unforgiving, it can also be the greatest teacher. So what do you think of this brave man who chose the wilderness over comfort and resilience over surrender? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of the Last Alaskan, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss more stories like this. Thanks for watching.